Hey folks, I would like to welcome everybody to the Bay Area Nature Journal Club's workshop on how to draw mammals. So today I've got several different objectives. The first is I want to give you folks a framework for when you see a mammal out in the field for quickly getting down the basic shape of what you see. We also, though, are going to take a look at some of the details of the internal anatomy and the muscles and figure out ways of suggesting those, especially on thin-skinned mammals. Thin-furred mammals or animals with short fur. You see a lot of that internal structure. And having a handle on that makes a huge difference in your ability to draw it. I've looked through a lot of different books on how to draw animals. And very often I'll see here's a picture of the skeleton and then here's a picture of all the muscles. And memorize these and then put fur on top of it. Doesn't really help me. But I think I've got a way of breaking down thinking about the skeletal structure and the muscular system of mammals that will stick in our heads in a way that we can really use it when we're out in the field. I have been accused of being kind of bird-focused, bird-centric, and we have, if I kind of look over the past agendas, there seems to have been an emphasis. But I wanted to, with this slide, show that, see, I draw things other than birds. And, sometimes, a mammal might work its way into the background of one of your bird drawings, and so you want to be able and ready to handle that. What should you do should that happen? Well, having a way of simply, quickly getting down the functional anatomy that you're observing and being able to tell the difference between what is a lump just because fur is matting up in a strange way and what is something really important and structural that is happening underneath that mammal is going to make a big, big, big difference in your ability to draw. And so today we're going to make that distinction. And allow us to be able to quickly draw critters in a way that brings them alive, gives them life, and also anatomical accuracy. Not every drawing that you do has to be anatomically accurate, but if that is your goal, these will be a toolkit to help you do that. And it's going to start, though, like this part up here, people tend to do okay with that. The confusing part is all those sort of weird mammal legs. So we're going to start by exploring an amazing feat. All right? We're going to take a look at the legs and feet of mammals and quadrupeds and how those differ from each other. So this is a drawing of the legs of a bear. These are the back legs. There's the pelvis. This is the upper leg bone, also called the femur. There's our kneecap. These are the lower leg bone or the calf bones here. That's the tibia and the fibula. And there's the foot right there. You see, that's very similar to me. If I'm standing like this, hip, hip, knee, knee, heel on the ground. Right? So that looks similar to this. That's a bear. And this is a lion. And that is a sable antelope. So these three foot arrangements represent the variability in how critters hold their legs that you're going to be seeing. And at first it looks kind of overwhelming. You're like, oh my God, I can handle this. All right, but this is looking scary. But there's actually less variation going on here than you at first think. And what you want to look at is the difference between these three is essentially how this animal is holding its feet. So below the orange line, that's the animal's foot. Or technically, what's our foot. Right? So our foot has a bunch of sort of long bones in the middle of it. These are our metatarsals, and then little toes at the end, and a heel bone sticking out. So here are those bones in the middle, the toes, and the heel bone. What's going on is in some of the critters are holding their whole foot flat on the ground. Some are up on their toes, like that. Right? With each step, they're going further. All right? And others, on the other hand, are, let's see if we can do this, up on their toenails. Okay, can't do that for long. I don't have toe shoes. So for our friends at home, some critters are flat-footed. Some are up on their toes like this as a permanent way of walking around. So their heel is perpetually off the ground. And then others, there we go, are walking on the tips of their toes, on their toenails. That's what a hoof is. The hoof is the toenails. So depending on how you're holding that foot, and so look at this. So here's the heel, there's the heel. All right? Here is that foot, here's the metatarsals, this middle part of the foot. Here that is here. And look here, in the antelope and in the deer, these metatarsal bones in the middle of the foot, they fuse together to make one long, strong bone. Instead of having a lot of little thin ones that could break. It makes one long, strong bone. And that puts the heel way up off the ground. Look at how high the ankle gets. So the ankle starts off at ground level, goes up a little bit, way up the leg. And the same thing is happening over in the front leg. So in the front leg, here's a shoulder blade, shoulder blade, shoulder blade. Upper arm, or humerus, upper arm, upper arm. Right? Radius and ulna, these two bones here, those two bones here. Here the radius and ulna are getting fused. So the deer has given up the ability to twist its arm like this for a little bit more strength. Right? And here are the metacarpal bones of the foot, again, fused together. So the equivalent of the hand part of this leg, look at how the wrist migrates up the leg. Right? You don't have to memorize what's going to go on in all the different animals. These are the 3 ways you're going to see it. You can either be flat-footed on your toes or up on your fingernails. This is the hoofed animals. This is our dogs and cats. This is our friend the bear, raccoons. And this also can help you if you are doing animal tracking. Because how many toes do you see in a footprint of a bear? Yes, sir? 5. Every one shows, because it's doing that. Now, we go up to become a dog or a cat. You know how the dog has that little, the cats also have that little extra claw on the side? How many toes are now on the ground? 4. So dogs and cats, 4 toes show. Now we go up, we're a deer, right? How many toe prints? 2 show. And if you go to a horse, you've just got 1. Right? Horse and cow. So for our cloven hoofed animals, 2, right? If you're up on doing this, you've got 4, and then if an animal's walking around like this with 5. So when you were finding animal tracks out there, you actually are seeing something about the way this animal holds its foot. Let's take a look at the whole skeleton now. Bear, mountain lion, and over here is a black-tailed deer. Notice what happens with what we see of the legs below the body. So here's the hip, here's the knee, right at body level in this deer. So what you see coming out below that, this joint right here, what joint is that?
Ankle.
That's its ankle. There in the middle of the leg. So here's our shoulder, our elbow. What joint is that? That's our wrist. There in the middle of the leg. You don't see the knee, you don't see the elbow, because they're up against the body wall of the critter. All right? Over here in our mountain lion, we're seeing the same thing. Our elbow is right there. But this one, because it has its wrist closer to the ground, we've got our wrist not halfway up this space, right? It's close to the ground here, and here on the bear, the wrist is right at ground level. It's walking flat-footed. Of course, as it rolls its way forward, it can kind of come up onto those toes. So, if you have this kind of understanding of what's going on there, it is going to really help you quickly get down the shape of what you see. For a deer, look at this. Here's the shorthand in the field for a drawing of a deer. Here's the box of my body. Sticking out behind that, I have the heel there. In the front, I have the wrist. Notice here also that the back legs are bent like a spring. The front legs are straight. This is because the function, the purpose of the front legs is totally different than the function of the back legs. So here's the job of the back legs. What is the job of the back legs? What is it for? Yes, sir?
Walking.
So what, in the action of walking, you're absolutely right. Right? What is it going to do in the walking? What does it provide? It's the push, right? So it's going to go, so look at it, like big, muscular back legs. That is going to provide the thrust, the push forward. So big, spring-loaded back legs that attach with a ball and socket joint right here directly into the axial skeleton so that any push forward off those legs shoots that critter forward. Function of the front legs is totally different. The job of the front legs is that when the back legs push off, the front legs make sure that the head doesn't smash into the ground. So the back legs push off, the front legs come out, straighten, and boom. They're going to land straight, right, to prevent the head from hitting the ground. So look at this. The back legs are this bent spring. The front legs are a post to support you. If we take a look at some photographs and what we want to be able to do is to think of where are the joints in the legs. We want to start off by looking at the critter and being able to pick out, I can see your elbow, I can see your knee, I can see your wrist. What joint is this?
Elbow.
Good. All right, so you're way ahead. If you can look at this and say, okay, elbow,
Wrist. Shoulder.
there's our shoulder up in here. So our shoulder blade is up in there, our shoulder's in there, elbow, wrist, and the hand. So we've got hip bones up in here. What's in here? Hip joint. What's here?
Knee. Ankle.
And the foot's flat on the ground. So if you can look at this bear and sort of imagine yourself in a bear suit in that position, you're way ahead of the game. Let's take a look at the dog. Can you see its heel?
Yeah.
Where's the heel?
Like right
Up.
like
Down there.
Down here? Yep. So here's our heel. All right. Where's the wrist?
It's up on the. Yeah. No. Go down there.
Right there? Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Good. So look at how close the wrist is to the ground. Right? It's up off it a little bit. The wrist joint is right there. Then, what joint is this? Elbow. So shoulder.
elbow. Elbow.
Elbow. Good. So, and similar setup with the cougar. All right. So take a look at this and see if you can pick out its knee and its heel. That work okay for you? All right. Now, see if you can pick out its elbow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you pick out its wrist?
Yes.
And sometimes finding the exact spot where its hip is or its shoulder is can be a little bit difficult. But roughly somewhere up in here will be our hip. Roughly somewhere up in here will be our shoulder. So what is this?
Elbow. Knee. And wrist. Elbow. Shoulder. Elbow.
So that's what you want to be able to do. Now if you can do that, give it a try with this. All right. Can you pick out any joints?
Yes, over here.
Okay, what joint? So this is a good one. What is this one?
That was the elbow.
Wrist.
The wrist.
Elbow or wrist? Right here.
Wrist.
Wrist. Okay, good. Wrist. So the wrist is that one that we see right in the middle. Where is its elbow? Can we pick out an elbow?
Up, let's see, here.
Right there.
Yes.
Perfect.
There's our elbow. Great job. Where is, either on this one or this one, can you pick out a heel?
Heel is right here. No, over here.
There.
Yes. So isn't that weird? The heel right in the middle of the legs? Okay, so heel,
That was the
Wrist.
elbow.
Knee. Elbow. Shoulder.
perfect. One more, okay? Now, crazy long legs. But is it starting to make sense what you're seeing?
Yes.
And you see that box with the spring on the back and the posts in the front, also we can see right here on this guy.
Yep.
Right? Can anybody pick out its heel?
Over here.
Nice, nice. What about its wrist?
Right here.
Perfect. Right? Where is its knee?
Knee is up here. No. Oh, sorry, over here.
Yeah.
Yes. Good, good, good. And what is over here?
The elbow.
There's our elbow. All right? So if you can look at a photograph or an animal and pick out those parts, you actually know more about mammal anatomy than most people out there trying to draw them already. So when we go to draw a mammal, sometimes if I'm wanting to sort of get myself to think of, all right, I want to remember that there is, the hip, the knee, the heel. I'll sometimes draw in, as these blue lines suggest, just a couple little lines on a sketch to help me kind of think of what is going on with the legs. Because it's going to be different in this guy than, say, the deer. Right? So in the deer, this is going to flip down. In the deer, this is going to turn down. So it's no longer walking flat-footed like the bear. Let's take a look at some ways of, in a quick sketch, blocking in some of the most important aspects of the body. That, if we get these down, we're going to have something that has the basic form of this. So remember, if you've been to some of my bird drawing workshops, I look at posture, proportions, and angles. It's the same thing for this. Let me define for you what is meant by posture, proportions, and angles in the context of drawing a mammal. All right? So for posture, excuse me, what I'm generally thinking of is the sweep of its back and neck, as if I am drawing its spine. So if it's jumping up, or the whatever action it takes is often reflected in its spine. So an animal that's leaping up, I might have a first initial line like this. It allows me to kind of quickly capture some action. And I'm going to build the rest of the drawing around that. By proportions, what I'm talking about is how big is its body in terms of how high it is and how long it is. And how high is that off the ground? How big is its head relative to this body, and how far away from the head, from the body, is that head? So basically you're thinking of the sizes of the different parts of the things. And I'll sort of show you how I block that in a moment. And lastly, angles. The angles are, if you look at this, there are some really sharp corners on this mammal. All right? We've got, here, 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 here. Right? There are angles all over this thing. And so, what are some ways of helping myself see those, capture the most important angles to be able to get a feeling for this critter? If you over-round your animals, you're going to sort of miss the corners, the angularity of the body. So getting those angles is going to be a really useful, a really helpful thing we can do. So let me do a kind of a walkthrough of what that might look like with a deer like this one. I'm going to draw in with blue lines here some of my sort of initial basic, my basic quick sketch lines. Could I borrow your blue pencil for a moment, Lena? Sure. Thank you. This is a non-photo blue pencil. I like the erasable kind. When I'm sketching mammals or other subjects, I often start with a quick, light, fast drawing with this pencil. What it does is it allows me to have make sure it's the erasable kind. Right? It gives you this ghost image that allows you to work out the posture, the proportions, and the angles. Then I can draw these sorts of details in on top of that. But if I start by like, here's my eye, and then here's my nose, and here's my antlers, by the time I get over to drawing the hoof, I'll have all these details that are sharp and good, but the body size will be wacky. Because my brain can't pay attention to body size and detail at the same time. So first, I'm going to get that body size framed out. So here's what that looks like. Thank you very much. Right, I start with thinking of the flow of its back and neck, as if I was giving it sort of a spine, or sort of the feeling of the flow down its back. That's my posture line. I do this lightly, loosely on my page, kind of getting the energy of that critter. Then what I do is I'm going to start looking at the proportions. And the trick that I found is most helpful for getting proportions is to think of the proportions box. So that is going across the back, down from the front of the shoulder, the back of the hips, to where it meets the ground. What is the shape of that box? It's going to be different for different species. A cow can be something like that. A Garanook can be something like that. Right? This happens to be a square, right? But that, just dropping that square in, I like, oh gosh, you're about as big that way as that way. I put that in on my piece of paper. I have just helped prevent myself from making a deer that's way too long or too tall. So this one box just solved a whole bunch of problems. The next thing I'm going to do is, where's the belly in that box? Is it halfway down? Like if this was a cow, it would be way down here. Cows are mostly body and a little bit of legs. So on this one, it's mostly legs. Not quite half, a little bit less than half. So I put that in. This box, the body box here, solves tons of proportional problems. I can also do a body box if it's looking towards me. All right, it would be something like this. On this critter looking for me, its body's roughly up here. How high is it going? Now, these posts on the side, the edges of that box, are not the legs. We'll be reinforcing that in a moment. But those are not the legs. That's just there to get the right distances of these parts. The next thing I'm going to do is look at where the head is relative to this body. People tend to make the heads too big and too far away from the body, so they have to draw a big neck to stretch out to it. So double check and sort of help your head be the right size for the body. As you put in your little blue circle, if you feel like it's a little bit too big, just non-photo blue pencil, draw a new head in there. You can have several heads going, and then pick which one feels the best to you. If you tend to make the head too big, your critter will look too cute. You want it to look cuter, make a bigger head. Right? So that's why baby animals look cute. You see a little puppy running around, it's going to have a really big head compared to the body. Right? And that's going to make it look cute. Same with the kitten. So I'll start with sort of a circle for the brain case, and then stick a rectangle on the end of that for a snout. And the length of that snout is going to change with different types of critters. So cat family, for instance, is a very short muzzle. Longer in things that are doing long distance running, like deer. And dog family things will have a long snout. But some critters long, some critters short. So take a look at your critter and see what it does. And now I'm going to turn to the legs. Remember that box with the bent spring coming down in the back and the posts coming down in front? I'm going to add that into my drawing here. Note, however, that they are not coming out like this. They are in a little bit. So the legs are coming in somewhere in here. The legs are coming in somewhere in here. So there's some box on either side in front of that. And now, the next step has the potential for completely revolutionizing and changing the way you draw. If you let this next technique into your regular vocabulary of drawing, I don't think there's any single thing people can do to make their pictures better than pay attention to this one next approach. You ready? It's the negative shape. Negative shapes, I think, are the most powerful, most unused drawing tool ever. And the idea of the negative shape is that I'm not going to look at the body of the deer. I'm going to look at the shape of the air here underneath its legs. And when I do that, I'm not looking at this confusing detailed part of the body. This is an extremely simple shape. It's just the shape of the air there. And I can concentrate on that. And what I do to myself is I will try to draw in. I'll say, like, roughly, okay, you are, it's some shape like this. Okay. Now, if I have my critter and I have my legs coming down and I start to put in my negative shape and I kind of go like, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't really fit what I'm seeing out there. Here's what most people do. They'll start drawing and they'll say, maybe I should check the negative shapes. And they kind of look at the negative shape and they go, yeah, that's kind of right. And then your negative shape sort of voice in the back of your head is going like, whoa, wait a minute, wait. I think we're a little bit too long here. What I'm seeing out there is a little bit more this way. And then you go like, hey, over there, quiet. You want to get in there and start drawing the hair, right? You're so excited about, like, I want to draw the hair and the nose and the eye and all these sort of things to start the real drawing part. You're like, quiet, negative shape voice, right? I'm like, yeah, okay, we're good. And maybe they'll help me kind of get some angle here, right there. And your negative shape voice is going, no, it's this way. And what we do is we ignore that little negative shape voice, right? We go like, quiet, I want to draw the nose, right? And they're like, but then it'll be like the legs are gonna, right? And you're like, shh, quiet, okay, we're good enough, right? If you skip that little voice and just blast on, right, you miss this incredible opportunity to easily fix your proportions. At this point, it's super easy to change. If you just kind of like, what was that negative shape of voice? You're like, oh, it's a little bit too, like, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just like draw in underneath it. Right? Okay, this is actually what the negative shape should be doing. Then that's going to cause me with my blue pencil to make some other modifications up here, right? And then it all fits, and then I can go on and keep drawing. But pay attention to that negative shape voice. And then, when you go to put in your details, they'll go in on top of this framework that really has the posture, the proportions, the angles. There's some other great little negative shape places to look. You look at the angles around the back, the haunches of this thing. Sometimes the flow across the back, the angles under the head. You can use these negative shapes to really define and improve what you're looking at. And that is an absolute game changer if you listen to those voices. Look at this as a negative shape. Do you see how when you really focus on that, you can draw that shape up, over, up, back, down on your piece of paper? But if you have this long deer drawing and you're like, and your voice is going like, whoa, that's like, it should be shorter, right? And you ignore that, then when you get to the end of your drawing, your critter will still have all the wrong proportions. Look at how vividly that captures the whole shape of the belly and the distances between the legs. Look at the line across the back here. If you're looking at the line of the neck, that's actually more confusing than looking at the shape of the air back here and catching those angles by looking at the air. Look at, just try focusing on the leg. And notice when you're focusing on the leg, it's harder to see the angles of the edge. Negative space is a game changer for how you look at something. I'll be sitting there and I'll be looking at negative shapes and kind of coming in like this with my drawing. I'm looking at the negative shapes. Sometimes when people are looking at me drawing, they think I'm here drawing and focusing on this. I'm actually looking at this back here. That's what I'm drawing as I'm making my line. I'm not looking at where all the confusing detail is. So here are some lines drawn in by focusing on negative shapes. The next thing I'm going to do is give myself a few little guidelines for putting in some of the meat of the body and the major muscle groups. We're going to take a look at these in details in a minute. For now, just notice three things. Thing number one, back's leg more muscular and big than the front leg. Thing number two, in each of the legs we go from a big mass of muscles to a medium-sized zone to a skinny zone. Big, medium, skinny. The third thing to notice here is that there's sort of the shapes of these two masses up here in the body, they're kind of like parentheses, encapsulating the body here. They're like bent, these weird sort of lima bean shapes, they're both bent in like that, like little parentheses, right? And we'll look at why this is in a moment. But having these little sort of parenthesis muscle masses is a very effective way at summarizing a ton of anatomical detail in just a few lines. Lastly, what I'm going to do is put in a little ball up here where its antlers are. And what this is going to do, when I get to drawing the antlers, that's going to constrain me from going out and making huge antlers. Anything that your brain thinks is really cool, you tend to make too big, right? And so you get this sort of like challenged butter deer look, right? This huge rack of antlers. And really your mule deer out there just had this reasonable little thing on top of its head, but anything that's really cool, we tend to overdo it. So this helps me not overdo that. So I'm not going to get bigger than this. You'll find when you're drawing your antlers in there, you're really going to want to go out beyond that. But having that little line there is going to help you keep constrained. So this is what my initial kind of non-photo blue pencil or light graphite pencil line, if I just press very lightly, might look like. And then if I have that, I can draw my details on top of that. And now I'm focusing on how do I make this line, but I've already got this framework that is blocked in by basic proportions. So I don't have to do everything all at once. If I'm focusing on how do I do texture at the same time that I'm trying to get the legs to be the right length, I'm going to be overwhelmed. It's helpful to look, so here we looked at a deer. Let's now take a look at how I might kind of approach this with a different kind of critter. By the way, this is a fairly fast process. This isn't, I've taken longer to talk about it here than it takes to actually draw this. So when you're out there in the field, you're kind of going like, oh yeah, okay. Oh, too big, okay. Uh-oh. Okay, make that a little smaller there. Yeah, negative shape. Glad I checked my negative shape. Right? So, it's a faster thing. Right? But you can block in this shape and then we're going to try it with bear. On bears, the shaggy fur obscures a lot of the sort of anatomical muscular detail. But if we were to get in there some scissors and give this bear a haircut, there is a form underneath that is kind of familiar looking to us. Right? So, it's got an elbow, it's got a wrist, hip, knee, and heel. Poor bear. Having a really bad hair day. That's kind of what's going on underneath the fur. And then you put a whole bunch of fuzz and shag on top of that. And there's a little buddy bear with a hip and a knee and a heel down here. Shoulder and a shoulder up in here, an elbow down here, and a wrist flat on the ground. So I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of what this might look like, just so you can sort of see the similarity and the difference than how that looked with that deer. So it would start the same way. Look, here's kind of the flow of the back. And then I would put in a body box. Look at how this body box is different from the one that was the deer. Right? So long, squashed this way. And look at how much of this critter's body is, that body box is filled with the body, not the legs. Isn't that cool? Totally different situation than, so this helps me get the proportions of bear, not the proportions of deer. So I'm not even thinking about legs at this point. I'm just thinking of major I'm starting big and then starting to zoom in. Here's my head and its little muzzle. And I've got little bare feet that stick out the bottom. On this, just as before, the negative shape is huge. Try this negative shape thing. It's different. It's a weird way of thinking and looking at things. But it can be a total game changer for how you observe and work. So if I could get in there and also sort of put it, you can see how there's a little bit of the lima bean here and in here. In this case, I am just going to, I'm so excited about drawing my bear, that I'm going to sort of skip that. But you see how that frame makes that bear. But if you're thinking, I want to draw fur right off the bat, you're doing that without a structure that is going to give you that framework. So that framework first, and then the hair detail. Are there any questions at this point?
It's very realistic.
Yeah, so that's so this kind of approach is sort of for getting kind of a realistic impression of what you're seeing there. Then a lot of times, like if you're doing cartooning and things like that, what people will do is they'll take some aspect of something and exaggerate it, and you can have a lot of fun with your imagination. But this one, I'm really trying to go from what I'm seeing is a very kind of useful frame for putting things in. Yes?
For the tail or for the ears, do you do the same thing by putting a couple around it, like the antlers, or not so much?
If you find that they're kind of going crazy on you, that might be a really useful way of handling that. I know the artist Keith Hansen in Bolinas, when he's drawing a raptor, he'll just put a little circle up in front of its face to help him kind of make sure he doesn't make the beak, because most of the hawks are going to have a beak that's like going to be a little tiny thing like that, and it allows you to kind of not do that. So those, if you find that, especially on things that are really interesting to you, we tend to make those really too big.
I did have a question about the second ear, the one that's further away. Yeah,
Mhm.
Just trying to draw it, it's kind of weird, so I don't know how to
Yeah, so we're looking at a side view of the ear there. This is the back side of the ear, and this might be part of the front of the thing that's sort of curling around. And the nice thing is when you're out there with the critters, you don't have to make this stuff up. You're not saying to yourself like, what would an ear be doing at that angle? You're looking at you, and you're kind of like, what would it, oh, that's what it's doing, and then you're just putting that down. So don't think you have to like memorize like, what would an ear be doing at, because you'll actually have the reference in front of you. So now let's actually take a look at putting fur on our critter. All right. I was looking, in preparation for this, I was looking through several different books and saying how other people suggested to draw fur. And I found several books that suggested this way. They said, here's how you draw fur. What you do is you first go like this, and then you go like this. And then you go like that. And then you do that across the entire animal. Partway across, you get really sick of drawing fur, so you're making a little bit more spread out, and then the whole thing looks like this weird infected porcupine. Alright? My suggestion is, don't do that. Alright? From a distance, you're actually not seeing, when you're thinking of, I'm going to draw the hair, from a distance, you're not actually seeing hairs. What you're seeing from a distance is clumps of hairs. Right? You're seeing clumps of hairs, and that's what you're going to draw. We'll give you some sort of examples and kind of look into this, but for me, the most inspiring person to look at, I looked through a lot of drawings like who really gets this fur thing. And hands down, I think the person who handles it the best, drawing mammals and kind of getting a feeling for their pelt, is this guy named William D. Barry. He was an illustrator up in Alaska. And his critters really feel, their anatomy is spot on. And you feel like you could put your hand into the fur. Right? But what he's not doing is he's not drawing the hairs. He's drawing the pelt. He's drawing the mass of fur across the animal. And so look at this. You're not actually, you're thinking like, I'm seeing hairs here. You're actually seeing clumps of hairs out there. You're seeing big cracks, shadows between clumps of hair, not individual hairs. And here again, we're seeing the clumps of hairs. We're seeing the shadows between little packets of fur. We're not seeing individual hairs. But what we do is when we say to ourselves, I know that this is made of little hairs, we start doing this. Right? Even if I'm doing this, these little marks at this distance, these would be something like 3 times, like the size of this pin sticking out the back of this critter. Right? So if I'm drawing hairs, I'm actually drawing things that, like if you put like a single hair down on your piece of paper and try to draw that with your pencil, your pencil is actual size, making a line bigger than that hair. So don't draw hairs here, because you can't even do it actual size on your piece of paper. Draw the clumps of hairs. Look for the shadows. Even on somebody fuzzy like this. All right? I'm not drawing the hairs, I'm drawing the shadows between the clumps. And as I come around the edges of something like this, I'm not drawing hairs, thick here and flicking out here, right? So I'm not thinking I'm drawing hairs flicking out like that. What I'm seeing, what I do, is I use what I call Bill Barry lines, so after William D. Barry, because I looked through his sketches and said, so Mr. Barry, what are you doing? And he's got, he'll just sort of say like, here's sort of the back of the edge of the head, and he'll make these little flick lines in, starting thicker out here and flicking in like that, right? That is what a crack in the fur would be doing. So you're drawing the cracks in the fur, not the hair. So the little flick lines don't get big and go out, they actually are big and they go in, because it's a crack in the fur, not an individual hair you're drawing. And then I don't do those over the whole thing, or it starts to look this really weird mechanical thing. Some places I'm seeing sort of a smooth edge. Other places I see more shagginess. So you tend to get a lot of shagginess in here, a lot right in there, often right along the back of the leg in there. Sometimes a little bit more shagginess right in there. So those are places where you often see some serious shaggy on a critter. And we'll get bigger cracks appearing. The bigger you make your cracks, the more you get a sense of having a thicker fur. So big cracks are what you're going to see in thick fur. So for my dear friend here, got a few little Bill Barry lines. But mostly, I'm just keeping it smooth because it's a really short-haired critter. In putting some shading in with my pencil, I tried to avoid the temptation of starting to draw hair. It can be hard to do, right? But I'm just trying to focus on where is it dark, where is it light. I can keep it like this, or I'm going to do a watercolor on this, so I put watercolor in the shadow area across here. And look at this, in this next step, all I'm doing is just taking one solid coat of brown and putting it across the whole animal. Once that watercolor coat is dry, if I put another watercolor coat over it, it's going to stay put. And then you've got this shaded brown critter. I wanted it to be a little bit warmer brown, so put one more coat of paint in there. And trick that out a little bit with a colored pencil, a white colored pencil, to suggest. I think I got a little bit too hair-like in my kind of sheen marks here. I would rather see that done a different way. But what I'm not doing is drawing hair all over the critter. Cracks in the fur. You see how big and deep those are? That really makes you feel like you could put your hand right in there. The places with the deepest fur, you've got the biggest cracks. So for my bear friend, I'm drawing the cracks in the fur. Look at these bilberry lines right up there. You should check out the book Alaskan Field Sketches by William D. Berry. Order it. It is like my go-to source whenever I'm puzzled of how would you draw that. I go, what would Bill Berry do? I flip it open like, oh, that's a great way to solve that. It's just brilliant, brilliant sketches. The drawings run off the page. So I could keep this like this or turn it into a watercolor. Here I'm going to turn it into a watercolor. If I put a big coat of watercolor across this, I would lose where I put all those shadow marks. So the first thing I did was I just got some dense black paint, put it in wherever those cracks are, and let that dry. Once it's dry, now this is just a two-step thing here. Step one, the shadow cracks. Step two, just put another coat of paint over the whole thing, and this is what you got.
Cool.
So that was just this, with then just one more coat of paint across it, across the whole thing. Not doing anything, but I got this sort of sense of cracky fur from doing that. Decided I wanted to take, I could stop here, or I decided I wanted to have a little bit more shadows down below, put those in, and then wanted a little bit more kind of crackiness in the fur, because when I'm putting more coats of paint on, see how those cracks start to lose them. Right? So I put those in again. The shadowy marks, the crack and fur marks, consistently inconsistent. Right? So I'm not regularly doing the same kind of mark, going crack, 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 crack. Right? I've got big crack, little crack, medium-sized crack, big crack. The spacing, the sizes, all of those are consistently inconsistent. Give it a little brown nose. And then black bears often have a little bit, sometimes a bluish sheen to those at first. So I got some blue paint, put it in there. The last thing I did is I realized that some places it had gotten so dark that parts of the drawing had become confusing. Like look at this in here. You see this? So what's going on here? There's a shadow here behind the leg, and then it comes down here. So somebody could read that as, oh, there's shadow here behind the leg, or they could actually read this as all one continuous shape going up there. Because this runs into that, that's what artists call an adjacency problem. That this shadow coming down is adjacent to, directly comes into the corners of where this starts. That is visually confusing. So there's an adjacency problem there. And I'm also kind of losing the edge of this. So I got out a blue colored pencil and just put in some clumps of fur highlights and solve that problem. So to go from that to that. Again, drawing the clumps, not the hairs. By the way, I'm going to put these all up online as blog posts. So if you want to see these drawings again, they will all be there as blog posts. The deer one, the bear one, and all the other sort of series from this class. There'll be a special blog post on drawing fur for you. Bill Berry lines. You got to check out William D. Berry. Amazing. So what we've done now is we have looked at how to kind of frame in the critter and a little bit about adding detail. But suppose for a moment that you wanted to take it a little bit further. Right? What if you wanted to, sometimes you look out there and you see more anatomy there than the simple kind of formula or that bent lima beam suggests. Actually knowing a little bit more about the underlying musculature, having that information in your head, if you know more than you are drawing, you're able to simplify things in a much more effective way. When you are looking at an animal, you can say, well, that bump over there, that is actually a really important structural muscular thing. That bump over there is just because the wind is blowing kind of a weird way right now. Right? Or it got a little sort of weird matting with some dirt in its fur. It's impossible to put everything in, so when you're making your choices of what to put in and what to leave out, you can really show the structure more effectively. So to do this, we've got a worksheet. We're going to be looking under the hood here, And can we help pass this out, folks? Can we help pass this out? Sure. Thank you so much. All right. We're going to look under the hood. We are going to really geek out on the anatomy here. And we have those 3 muscle types. Oh, so for folks at home who are watching this on video, there should be a link attached with this video where you can download this same worksheet yourself and be able to do this at home. If you can't find attached to the link, if this has gotten sort of separated from that on YouTube, go to johnmuirlaws.com. You'll be able to find the full thing there. What we're going to do is take a closer look at understanding the anatomy, so that when you see an animal, it won't just be this sort of lumpy, bumpy thing. Right? But when you look at it, you're like, oh, I know exactly what each of these landmarks is. Right? And the deer will make a lot more sense to you. To do that, we have to, in order to then be able to draw the fur and the contours of the fur, you need to sort of understand, in order to draw the fur, you need to understand what the contours of the body are doing. In order to understand that, you need to know what the muscles are doing below the skin. In order to do that, you need to understand what the skeleton is doing below the muscles. In order to do that, you need to have an idea of the intention and the movement and the weight, the balance, the angle of this animal. So we are going to, on this skeleton, add not every muscle in the book, but a handful of key muscles that make prominent big bumps on the body and are really useful to us as illustrators. These drawings of where they just sort of show here's the skeleton of the deer, and here's all the muscles of the deer. Memorize this. That doesn't really work for me. What works for me is to pick out a few key muscles that make big, important bumps. Right? You don't have to memorize them all. And then be able to pick those out on the body of a critter. And you're going to be able to do that. You ready? Here we go. Muscle 1. Right? Back to anatomy class. Right? Is that how do you pronounce this? Gastrocnemius?
Yeah. Gastrocnemius.
Gastro or gastro?
Gastrocnemius.
Gastrocnemius, all right, the gastrocnemius, or your calf muscle, right? So this is, on the human being, your big calf muscle, right? And it attaches right back here on the back of your femur, has a big fleshy head, and then goes all the way and attaches to the base of your heel. So if you feel this little Achilles tendon in the back of your foot, that is this base of the gastrocnemius. So draw that in on your sheet. All right? Make a little squiggle here where it originates on the femur, widens and then narrows until it inserts on the tip of that heel. Are you ready for more?
Yeah.
Number 2. The big fleshy muscle in front of your thigh, what is that in a human being?
The quadriceps.
We've got our quadriceps. That's a 4-headed muscle. So here's that big fleshy muscle right here. All right. Here, actually, check this out before we do that. Look at what happens. Just kind of going back to the gastroc again. So I've got this big Achilles tendon coming out here. Over here I have my leg bone coming down. There's a space between them. Look right here. This makes this very clear, defined divot in the back of the leg. And you'll see this again and again and again in critter after critter. When you see this, think heel. Right? That is going to show up whether you're drawing an elk, whether you're drawing a moose, whether you're drawing a coyote or a mountain lion, you're going to be seeing that right there. So now we're going to go up here and look at this big fleshy muscle right up there. That is the triceps of the leg. In quadrupeds, it's not a four-headed muscle, a quad. It is a triceps, a three-headed muscle. And it starts up here on the hip bone and on the femur and inserts on the tip of the kneecap. So the muscle goes from big, broad to a narrow little insertion right there on the tip of the kneecap. And when you are ready, look up. Okay. Now, one more for the back of the legs. This is one that is going to go from this little point of the hip here, and then it's going to fan out in a big triangle to below the knee and out across the gastrocnemius. This is the biceps of the femur, the biceps of the back of the leg. Right? The muscle in the back of our legs here. Very often there's a little groove you'll see on the side of that, and also you'll sometimes see you'll sometimes make a little ridge at the back of the leg of the deer. These three muscles are going to give much of the shape of the leg. Going back to here, visualize those muscles happening inside this leg. Can you see them and their reflection on the surface? And how they form the shape of that leg. So this little shadow here ends up being a big deal. Right? Yeah, that's the edge of that triceps. This little divot here, that's a really big deal. You go back to that one. The muscles of the front leg are going to be smaller. Here, this is the big mass of muscles up here. This is the big mass of muscles up here. And let's see the first one. This is the triceps of the arm. Now, on the human being, like on all these other critters, the tricep is the muscle on the back side of the upper arm here. So this is your triceps. If you want to strengthen your triceps, you're doing exercises this way. Or if your foot is down, that's pushing off to push you forward. So that's a really useful functional muscle. So you find big triceps in a lot of these animals, not big biceps. The only thing a deer has to lift up is its unweighted leg. It never has to lift up a barbell. So it's not going to develop massive biceps. Right? So we're going to completely ignore its biceps. Triceps, huge, attaching at the back of the shoulder blade and also on the surface of the humerus here, the upper arm bone, and connecting to a little point right back here on the tip of the elbow. So this whole thing moves attached to the elbow, and that's what's causing this arm to move out. So attaching up in here, inserting right down in here. This next, yes sir?
Yeah, isn't the biceps over there the triangle?
Yes, so this is the biceps of the, so biceps and triceps just means how many sort of meaty parts this muscle has. So this one has 1, 2, and then there's a third one inside, so it's a triceps of the leg. This over here has 1, 2, and then there's a third one on the inside, so it's a triceps of the arm. The muscle that's in the front here has 2 big heads on it, so it's a bicep. This one down here has 2 big heads on it, so it's also a bicep. So bi means 2. Tri is 3. So this means just basically, what they're saying is, this is the 3-headed muscle of the arm, this is the 3-headed muscle of the leg, this is the 2-headed muscle of the leg. And if you're drawing the biceps up here, that'd be the 2-headed muscle of the arm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's confusing because when we hear bicep, we think, oh, you must be talking about the biceps of the arm, right? When we hear triceps, you think, oh, you must be thinking of the triceps of the arm, right? But here, triceps, it has to do with how many heads that muscle has. So now we're going to actually have a lower leg muscle here. This is the one that allows the leg to do this. It inserts on the bottom of the humerus here, and it goes past this wrist joint, and then or originates up here, and then inserts right here in front of the wrist bones, the metacarpal bone right here. It's all fused together. It's rather skinny. We're going to see this in animals that use their front limbs more start to get beefier and beefier and beefier. But in this critter, it's going to be skinny. Bless you.
So the name tells it all. It goes on the carpus, the radial bone, and it tells an extension of the foot.
Yes. Yes. Lena's a doctor.
I had to think of
Yeah. So yeah, if you're like, hey, that makes sense. So here, can you see the triceps of the leg, of the front leg? And we can see a little bit of a groove here. This extensor carpi radialis. So when I do this, when I turn my body in like this, if I'm a quadruped, you see this little muscle that is coming out at an angle right here? I don't know, I'll come over here so that people on the...
Yeah.
So this, it goes from the outside corner in like that. Right. When, if I'm like, if my hand's in this position, all the muscles are straight. But because we're turning our paws forward, that then cuts out at a diagonal across the arm. And so if a lion or something is walking towards you, you'll see this on the, you'll be looking like, wow, look at those muscles on the, exactly. Right? You'll see on its forelimbs, going from the outside corner to the in, is this sort of diagonal band of muscle. The last bit of deer muscle that we're going to add in is a big strap of muscle that goes from the back of the skull, and it inserts on the front of the humerus bone, the arm bone here. This is similar to the bone that goes from the back of our skull and inserts into our collarbone. Right? But these guys don't have that going into a collarbone. They have these huge beefy muscles on either side of the head, and that turns the head side to side, and that comes straight down into the arm bone. And that makes a big groove on the underside of that thick rope of muscle. That's where its jugular vein is. You can feel its pulse up in there. That also makes this very prominent bump on the neck that cuts down at an angle across the critter's neck. So if these is my little beastie here, what I'd like you to do is to pick one muscle, look at the muscle, stare at it, and look at how that is reflected on the surface anatomy of the deer. Now pick a different muscle and try it again. Pick one more and try it again. One last time. So that understanding what's going on there really makes a huge difference. You don't have to map out all these muscles when you're sketching in the field. Here's a couple of kind of quick shorthand ways of doing it. Here's the simplest, right? Just to think of, for the back leg, a big box attached to a medium-sized back box attached to a skinny one. So big, medium, small. Same thing going on in the front, however, it's smaller on top, and it's also organized this way. Big box, then from the back corner, here's the medium-sized box, and then a small box sticking out on top, coming out from that. So it's not set up like that. Right? It's all connecting to this back corner. That's probably the simplest way of doing this. And then you get this sort of box effect of the front leg. If you want to take it a little bit further, remember those two comma-shaped lima beans? Right? Sorry, parentheses-shaped lima beans. This approach gets you this bump from the end of the pelvis and the triceps of the leg, the end of the scapula, the triceps of the arm. So if this sort of a system becomes comfortable for you, you can summarize a ton of anatomical detail with a few of these little sketched blue pencil lines. For our buddy the bear, we don't see as much muscle detail. So what I'm going to do is on this bear drawing here, I'm going to kind of quickly go through the same thing, not taking as much time to sort of draw each one. If you want to do that, we will put it up again as a blog post. But I just want us to really pay attention to how similar this is to the deer. Ready? We start with that gastrocnemius on the back of the leg. Then we put the triceps on the front. It's going to go from up, attaching up in here, to this little point right there. Then the next one from this point in a big widening fan down across the leg. So exactly the same thing. We've seen it before. Now, from the back of the edge of the scapula and a little bit on the humerus here, connecting to the point of the elbow, the triceps of the arm. And then, from right here on the base of the humerus, down to the carpal bones of the wrist, right? We have this band. The arm then is big, getting medium-sized, getting small. Lastly, from the back of the skull to the front of the humerus, this big, beefy band of muscles. And you're not going to see as much ripple detail because of the shagginess of the bear. Right? So we have looked at the two extremes, right? The flat-footed one, we have looked at the deer, the ungulate. Here's kind of a fun thing though. If we start looking at this guy, the one in the middle, there's actually one more kind of level of subtlety that happens with the cat family. Basically, if you're drawing the dog, it'd be just the same thing all over again. But the cats are using their forelimbs in really dynamic ways. What does a deer do with its forelimb? It can't even do this, right? It picks its leg up, puts it out, and puts it down on the ground. Puts weight on it. Then picks it up, empty, puts it down on the ground. So its leg is just designed to do this. The lion, on the other hand, is grabbing zebras and deer and all these sorts of things. It's tearing them apart. It's holding on. It's doing really dynamic stuff with its forelimbs. So its upper arms are built like Arnold. Alright? So the very powerful muscles of the mountain lion, it has these enormous forearms that would make Arnold Schwarzenegger blush and feel very jealous. Yeah? Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the internal anatomy of the big cat here. You'll see it's exactly the same thing in the back leg. There are two really cool changes that are going to happen up here. Right? Bonus bumps. So again, we're just going to kind of blast through these and look, it's the same thing. We've seen this before. We're going to have number one. Imagine where the gastroc muscle would go, right? visualize it and like make it happen. Hey, well done. Right? Now, did it do what you wanted? Okay, good. Now imagine the triceps of the back of the leg. Right? Where's it going to start? Where's it going to end? Something like that. Right? And then the biceps that come out behind that, where's that going to go? Something kind of like that. Did that work for you? Look at you guys! Right? But now we're into the front legs. Right? This is going to get really, really cool. Right? So number one, right? So if you do like a lot of pull-ups, or you like work the rowing machine, what does that exercise do? So shoulders and back, right? So it's a really good back exercise doing this. Right? Now if you're a lion, you're like, got you, zebra! Right? So you're working that, they're on, at night they're on the rowing machine. They're like, oh, National Geographic is coming, they hide the rowing machine, right? And so they develop their lat muscle to be the latissimus muscle to be this big, massive thing. And what it's going to be, it's on the deer too, but it's just kind of this not very big, important thing. Right? So it's going to go from across the back of here, and it comes down in a big sheet and connects, bing, right, on the inside of the humerus bone here. Okay? So, right, check out, even this is a zoo animal, right? Doesn't get to exercise a lot. Look at that lat. See that?
Yeah.
Ooh. Right? But now we start looking at the arm, and there's like some bonus ripples in here. What's going on with that? Well, I'm glad you asked, right? Triceps, just as before, attaching in here, coming down here. We're going to put in that big band of muscles across the front leg, and in this guy it's going to be pretty beefy because they're like twisting, turning, doing all sorts of cool things with their forelegs. But now, here's our bonus shoulder muscle, right? They also want to do this, right? This is the deltoid exercise, right? So what we're going to do is put deltoids in on our critter. And it's going to go from this little ridge in the middle of the scapula, of the shoulder blade, and attach to a little point right here in the front of the humerus. So a couple heads of this coming down to right in here. So we have the lat and the deltoid. The deer also has a deltoid. They're just these tiny little thin straps. And you're not going to see these as like this, this big ripple thing. We have the same muscle from the back of the head. And, whoop, we have a lion, right? So here on our lion buddy, look at those deltoids. Right, beautiful deltoids, nice little lat action going on. This is the zoo animal. A little bit of extracellulose, not cellulose, cellulite going on here, right? But check out the wild lion. Right? Look at these deltoids in here. Look at that lat. Oh man. Oh man, that is a fit critter. But we now can look at that and kind of like, oh, okay, this actually makes sense to me. I can see here's the triceps of the arm, right? You can actually see a little bulge of a bicep in there, right? I've got my lat. You've got all these muscles now popping up. Go online, do a search for lioness, and start looking around at their arms, and you'll be very, very impressed. Last is this big strap that goes from the back of the head down to here, just as in all those other critters we've been looking at. So now, same thing. Pick your muscle of choice, right? Focus on it, and look at how that is expressed in the skin. Again, pick another muscle. One more time. And one last one. Pretty cool? So, when we are out there sketching mammals, we have a way of initially getting the framework, the posture, the proportions, the angles. But we also now have an understanding of what is going on underneath the surface there. And you don't have to memorize every muscle, but I find picking a few, knowing where it starts, where it ends, is going to make a huge difference in making sense of the bumps and lumps on the body of the critter. Look at that nice little bit of that. The longer the hair, the less you see the musculature, but then you get to play with these sort of fun cracks into the fur. This is something you can do. It's going to take a little bit of practice, but it's fun. And what you want to do is, if there are ideas that you've seen here, if you can you look at this just to kind of check it out and see if this critter makes sense to you. Are you seeing things in a different way? So if there are some of these skills you think, I would like to incorporate this into my drawing game, here's what you have to do. In the next 24 to 48 hours, your brain is going to do a very important thing. It is going to decide whether or not the neurons that have been buzzing around these ideas need to be pruned or not. If you don't use them, your brain will go and blow them away. And the next time, a week from now, you want to sit down, this is going to be a distant memory. If, however, this is something that you would like to do, what do you do to get it to stick in your long-term memory?
Do it over and over again.
You practice. You do it over and over and over again. You start playing with it. And it doesn't have to be a laborious thing. You can make it a game. You can have fun with it. Right? If you've got a cat, you're drawing your cat, you're following your cat around the house. It starts licking itself, you start doing that little drawing. It starts sleeping, you go, thank you. Right? You get to do a longer drawing. You don't have a cat. You go do a Google image search. You bring up those pictures. You start drawing from those. Do them again and again and again and again and again. The more you do, you start playing with just sort of body shape. Right? Body shape, body shape, body shape. Now I'm going to do some texture. Ooh, big cracks in the fur, cracks in the fur, cracks in the fur. You get this feeling for cracks in the fur. You can play with Bill Berry lines. Do a Google image search for Bill Berry's artwork. Check it out. Order that book, Alaskan Field Sketches. It will blow your mind. And then what you want to do is just keep rehearsing and playing with it. If you also have a friend who might be interested in this, if you teach some of or all of this to them, the amount which you retain will be even greater. And it will stick in your long-term memory. And when you're out there at the end of this month in Point Reyes and around in the Tule Elk Preserve, and you come around the corner and pow, there's an elk. You start sketching. This stuff is all going to be at your fingertips. But if you don't do anything with it between then and now, your brain is going to prune it away. And you'll be like, how do you draw a deer? Right? So here's my challenge to you. Right? It's the contest. Whoever draws the most pictures between now and the next time that we meet here, 1 month from now, wins. I'm going to come with a little prize, right? And what you want to do is count up how many drawings you did, right? Feel free to post a bunch of them on the Nature Journal Club Facebook group, right? But whoever draws the most, I'm going to bring something cool for you, right? So my challenge to you is to bring up the amount of times that you are regularly drawing. Find ways to start to put it into your schedule. We've gone into really deep depth with all this crazy anatomy and stuff. Right? To make this time valuable and really worthwhile, you want to now use it and use it and use it. You do that, this will become instinctive and just a part of your game. You'll look at a mammal and you go like, I totally understand what's going on over there. And look at your triceps. All right, and bam, you're going to town. I'll have YouTube, so this will be available as a YouTube video if you want to review it. We're also going to have we are also going to have a blog posts giving all of these illustrations step by step with written instructions as well. Get out there, keep your nature journal open, have fun, play with it. Don't worry about perfection and having to make a pretty picture. If you make lots of pictures, the pretty pictures will automatically come on their own. It's a numbers game, right? Remember, whoever draws the most wins. All right? Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoy the workshop.